publication. So here she is above us in her mid-20s when she's living in Vienna, and it's the start of her journey. You see her on the left as an art student, and on the right you see this fantastic publication. And the book really emerged from an exhibition held here at the Duldig Studio in 2017. And at that time, Melinda Mockridge, honorary curator, research curator at the studio, had been doing quite a lot of work on the archive here and finding some wonderful further information about Slawa. And we had a series of other exhibitions looking at aspects of the history of Karl and Slawa, and it was decided this would be wonderful to have an exhibition focused on her. This was the exhibition itself, and it was called Innovation and Reinvention, focusing on her building up her career and her ambition in Europe up until 1938, and then with the arrival of the Nazis, the family had to flee initially to Singapore and then to Australia, where she reinvented herself again as an artist and designer and an educator. And the exhibition was an absolute revelation. I remember being so excited by the host of material, because while Karl's career has been the subject of two major books, there were some smaller exhibitions on Slawa, but she really deserved the full spotlight of scholarly research that Melinda gave her. And she brought together wonderful photographs from Slawa's life, examples of her sculpture, her drawing. I should just say this wall itself is some examples of her work. Also her fashion design, things we weren't really aware of, and her involvement with furniture design. It was an absolute lifting up the veil on Slawa's remarkable career. Here they are, Eva, of course, providing her extensive, deep knowledge of her mother. Melinda, burrowing through the archives, contacting scholars around the world. Stefan, pupil and student of Karl, who's worked with you as a curator for many years. They really brought together this amazing show. And at the time on the board, we said, well, I suppose we can produce, because this is a very lean organisation and does not have great financial resources. And we wondered if we could get a small pamphlet to accompany the exhibition. And we just felt she deserved better. She really deserved a book to equal the books that have been produced over the decades on Karl. And so we went into it, we decided we'd fundraise and we'd focus on really expanding on research that Melinda had already done. And I just thought to give a little glimpse of her career. She's born in Poland in 1901 to a well-to-do family, and the whole family moved to Vienna in 1911. And that's a little drawing, a self-portrait she did at that time, 10 years old. But you can see already the seriousness with which she is taking her life. And then later on, from the mid-20s, her evolving sophistication and also her ambition as an artist. And Melinda did a lot of work on her time as a student in Vienna. She enrolls initially in a sort of a fine arts school for women and girls. She goes on to work under the great Viennese sculptor Anton Hanak. It's there she meets a fellow student, Karl Duldig, and you see her there, they're all wearing their smocks. She's in the centre, and this is a time of... And Karl's at the bottom in front of her future husband. And they are a very talented group, and Melinda was fortunate to get in touch with some of the recent Viennese scholars who are doing a major rediscovery of women artists from this period. And you'll know from in Australia and around the world, Know My Name, various other things, that women artists are the focus of a lot of, what would you say, revisionist art history. And Melinda was lucky to get in contact with this wonderful scholar in Vienna, Andrea Winkelbauer, who had just produced in 2017 an exhibition called The Better Half of Jewish women artists in Vienna before 1938. She was thrilled to hear more about Slawa, and the book goes on with this research, and we actually contributed a chapter to the book, and it's placed Slawa within that European context, because she is not only a sculptor, she does painting, she does drawing. This is just some of the images still from that exhibition. And she, the works are just exquisite. Wonderful terracotta masks, and these fabulous direct carving using porphyry and alabaster. very Viennese, also very much a similar project being undertaken by Karl at this time, and their works of art are in this fantastic creative conversation. But not only the objects, there she is, she's fantastic, but she's full of ambition, a sense of what women are able to do in the 1920s Vienna. There's this wonderful culture of art and design, which includes, this great thing, this artist's ball, and they're all in fancy dress. There's Slawa on the left, look at that fantastic pose. There's Karl in the middle wearing these smart pants that Slawa designed, and they still exist. They were in the show, they're still in the collection today, these very modernist pantaloons that she designed. And of course, famously, she also designed the collapsible umbrella. She was caught out in the rain and she said, why do we have to have these unwieldy large umbrellas? Why can't we have something that folds up, goes into our bag? And she said, I'll invent it. And she invents it. She does a worldwide patent. This is the famous Flirt umbrella, and the examples are in the Powerhouse in Sydney. There are fabulous examples here in the collection. I've got a detail where you can see how much she's bringing art aside to the creation of this utilitarian but rather fantastic little thing. With the money from her sales, she pursues this design side. We see here some of her jewellery and little bits of clothing. In the centre is a bit of Wiener Werkstatt fabric, which she uses in the furnishing of their apartment in Vienna. And here you see, with the money from the Flirt sales, they're able to acquire contemporary furniture. And she actually collaborates with some of the designers, such as Sigmund Jarre on the right, to help produce the furniture. So this is this fantastic career that she is crafting, and then of course in 1938 they have to flee, but were able afterwards, in several decades later, due to a remarkable number of circumstances detailed in Eva's fantastic biography of her family. Much of that lost Viennese apartment was able to be brought out to Australia and is here in this little house today, amazingly. But the other thing I wanted to mention is she goes on. She reinvents herself here. She does do a little bit of art and design. They produce pottery in their initial studio in St Kilda, and then she becomes an important teacher. She teaches at Corowa and Brighton, and then for 16 years she's at St Catherine's Girls' School. She makes art a matriculation subject. She's contributing to debates at the time about art and education. I've got an image here of her getting the St Catherine's girls involved with setting up a sort of a Elizabethan Day event where they're doing this sort of a stage setting. So a remarkable woman. The exhibition brought home to us how truly, what a polymath she was. And we start to fundraise, and we try to get this sense also that another of her remarkable creations, her vision, is this actual museum. So from that exhibition, it opens up the sense of possibility that really Slawa's career deserves. And we now start thinking, what can we do about the book? We've got to fundraise for the book, but we also need to get fantastic book designers. And you see here, this is just the contents page of the book, where you can see we have the idea of that concept of the museum, Slawa as a modernist in Vienna, the context of the Viennese, a whole period and women artists in that, Slawa after 38, where she comes to Australia and does various things, Slawa as a designer, the umbrella and other design projects. We had Harry Eckquist, professor at the RMIT Design Hub, wrote about the Viennese interiors. And then we also had Slawa's vision for the gallery with Georgina Walker, who is a major scholar of private arts museums, reflecting on this vision today. So the book's great, we've got all the text, we've got contributing authors, but we need really good designers, because Slawa herself is a beautiful graphic artist. We must do justice to the quality of her art. And fortunately, we were able to secure two outstanding award-winning book designers, Klarissa Pfisterer and Hamish Freeman, and they came together and have produced this absolutely brilliant book. And so I'm now going to invite them to come and talk to you about designing this book and the end result. So please welcome Hamish and
Klarissa. Klarissa is the Pfisterer. I'm the Freeman. And together we are Pfisterer Freeman, and really it's just the two of us, but we also work with experts in all sorts of fields, from illustration, photography, pre-press, and typesetters, and we also are partners in life and work, and that actually happens sometimes, and it works well sometimes. It can be quite successful. So, we're going to the studio.
We have a studio at the Abbotsford Convent, so which has another history, a Melbourne history as well, and I think the nuns took on homeless girls and gave them a profession, but that's another. And they worked in the laundries there for the big hotels, ironing sheets and things. So, but that's another whole history we won't go into today. But the great thing is it has quite a sad history, but it has now turned into a beautiful place for a lot of artists and people like ourselves to create positive things like this book. And this is inside our studio, and we're a collection of friends who are all creatively working together. We don't work together, we work independently, so we're in there with 2 other illustrators and a fabric designer, and we each have a little nook and then a meeting space. So it's and the illustrators absolutely love the light. We have big windows, so that's really nice. We also have other studio friends that come in. The peacocks will wander through, which is really nice. Feels very farmy. Just a few things that happen in our studio, just to show how our community is built. We often have, well, not often, occasionally we'll have open days and kids will come in and do workshops. Our studio mates are on the right side there, and it just gives us that sense of community and giving back a little bit too. So we also have the Australian Book Design Award judging day in our studio. We've had that for 3 years, which is really lovely because we have all the special designers and people to do with book design fly in for the day and judge the year's work of books that are published. And so that's again really lovely connections. So another thing that we did recently is the slow focus. We did an exhibition, and as designers we're often observing others and telling other people's stories, so we decided as a group of 15 of us to put on a little exhibition and use the exhibition space at the convent and gather all like-minded and people that we wanted to celebrate as well, and we each put a piece into this exhibition, and it was just a lovely way of creating things for ourselves. So.
But the reality is that most of the time we just quietly design books in our studio. We've been doing it for about 20 years, and for us it's the challenges of the visual challenge, I guess, is the thing that really captures our interest, and we're motivated by that challenge. It's the thing that gets us going the most, and I think it's the same for both of us. I think most graphic designers, it's just that the challenge, that calling of trying to create something beautiful and interesting, and not necessarily from a blank canvas, actually working with an author and someone with a story to tell. And so we work with publishers big and small, and we also do work with self-publishers as well, and it makes up about, books makes up about 80% of what we do, which we feel we're pretty lucky to be able to do that. And so this is the process in a nutshell. We sort of see the project from beginning to end, from the concepts through to final product. We're briefed in the book, and then we develop first pages, we proof it. We're involved in the printing side of things as well, managing that, and then of course eventually it comes back to us as a final thing in the studio. So that's the short version, but it's a bit more involved than that. The best parts are probably creating a meaningful object. When you're a graphic designer, you don't always get to create meaningful objects, and so this feels pretty like it's something of value. And it also has a life of its own once it leaves the studio. So these are just some funny little pictures. We came across a painting that someone had done on the top right. It had Mercer and George's book under it, and then Gorman was advertising their new outfit, and decided to use the Mercury book for that. So you come across it in all sorts of things. It has a life of its own, and you spot it in the wild occasionally. So we have a background in more general design. We've worked in small and big studios in Australia and the UK. But when we started working for ourselves, we just gravitated towards books. And there are lots of reasons why we love books, and one of them is you get to work with really interesting things. This was a project where they discovered a chest in an attic in Scotland that the kids who lived in the castle had been playing with, and it turned out to be Governor Macquarie's chest from the very early days of white settlement, and it had been commissioned especially and filled with captured white birds that they'd stuffed and put into these amazing chests. And so it was our job to actually capture that spirit of that chest. And so we came up with this idea of the bookcase. When it opened up, it sort of revealed a drawer, which was a nice little result. And another interesting thing is we get to sort of tell really colourful histories. And this was a book about Edward Cole, who many people will know of, but I feel like he needs more recognition. He was a big figure in the 1800s in Melbourne and created the Book Arcade in Burke Street Mall that had an aviary, an orchestra, monkeys, you name it. He invented this idea of browsing without pressure to buy. And he was also a really big advocate against the White Australia policy at the time and published books about it. And he was just basically a really great guy. And it's really lovely to get involved with stories like that and try and pass it on. But also we got to design with rainbows, which was awesome for us, ticking a box.
And just to show the diversity of the projects we work on, this is a cookbook, so we'll go from history to cookbooks, and this was a lovely lady who's in Sydney, and she was Australian, but she had an Iranian upbringing, so she was quite a well-known cook. Not a chef, but a cook. And so she wanted to tell that story of her upbringing in Iran. And so with a project like that, we'll go to her house, which sits on the rocks of Bondi Beach. So it's like a 5-story house. And we had a stylist, and she would cook the meals, and a photographer, and then we'd go down the 5 floors and take the food on the lifts and photograph it down the bottom. And that was a fun project to do as well. Again, just to show the sort of diversity of the things that we do. Sometimes we have to roll up our sleeves and do illustrations, so this is a bit of a storm for a book that we've just completed. It's gone to press, but we had to illustrate 60 different herbs and vegetables for a lovely producer in Tasmania, so telling her story as well. So hopefully that prints well.
Sometimes we have to be brave and
have to wait for that one to
do
come.
illustrations. And sometimes you get to work with really great images. This was a book for the Australian Museum in Sydney, and it really is, it's about their collection of early collodion glass plates. But you'll see it's amazing, like there's a shark on trestles there. These are the first photos really of Australian animals that were taken as part of the taxidermy process, which prior to this you could only see engravings or the real thing. And so this is an amazing collection and really captures something special and a fascinating job to work on visually. So we really enjoyed that. Another thing we do is we often get quite involved in our project. This was a series of books we did with Betty Churcher, who was the director of the NGA. She travelled the world with her work, but in her own time she would go to exhibitions and galleries and just make sketches of the beautiful paintings that she saw just for herself. But in the end, she decided to publish these as a book. But we wanted to capture that sense of the sketchbook. So they're quite intimate, a bit smaller, they have that sketchbook feel. And we sort of put the sketches opposite the paintings. It was remarkable how good she was actually. But then I got a call saying that she found a last sketchbook that had been missing for a long time. But she said that she was unwell and she was probably not going to be able to see the end of it. So it was quite a sad start to that project. But we did work on it together, and I did just manage to get it finished so she could see it printed.
Yeah, which was quite forgotten that book.
Yeah. Another thing is that's good is serendipity. Sometimes interesting things happen. We were doing a book on George Thwaites, which was a very early colonial Melbourne furniture manufacturer. They were kind of like the first IKEA. They made catalogues and you could order furniture from the catalogue and then they would make it. And for the launch, because Government House had some of the pieces there still, they did the launch there. And when I designed the book, you can see there in the bottom left, I came across this great photo of an inlaid tabletop, and I thought, well, that'll work really well as a textural element that sort of captures the essence of what we're doing. And then we got to the launch, and the governor came running over and said she was amazed because that's the table that she works on every day. So it has those nice little moments too.
Oh, and this is a recent book that we did last year, and some of the, like Slava, we work on projects that we feel very passionate about, and this is, you can't quite see, but it's called Gundi Whirly, and it was a big tome of a book, and it's the only book on Indigenous architecture. So to be a part of bringing that to life was very special for us. And the publisher was quite unsure about how to approach it, but we felt it really needed to look like an architectural book. So a little bit different to the other, we've done other Indigenous books, but we felt this had to have a really good, strong sense of design and structure. So bold colours, but we also used uncoated paper similar to Slava, and it had a crafty feel to it as well. So,
and we wanted to bring it to like a wider audience and not look too specialist and fresh and new, so bring new eyes to it.
And brings us to our journey to meet Slava. Well, we didn't meet Slava, we met the amazing team and Eva, who came along with a brief. And this is how all our projects start, and I thought I actually should show you what they approached us with. And every project, as I said, starts with one of these. Sometimes it's just spoken word over a coffee, but they had done their homework. They came very well prepared, and they had this beautiful brief with images. So, and on a side note, we decide whether we will do the project, and if we feel passionate about it. And we'd just been to, you mentioned it before, the Know Your Name at the NGA, which was about female artists emerging and coming out of the shadows. And then I thought about how I was taught about art. Everyone probably recognises this book. And it's, I looked it up, it's been printed, how many copies? 8 million copies in 30 languages. So here I was a Year 12 student learning about art, and it was from the beginning of time till now. And when I was this, what I thought was a creative student, and guess how many students, how many female are in this book, represented in this book? None. Yeah. So, but it's been revised and they've put out a new edition, and it's one of the biggest sellers for this publisher. They've revised it and now they have one. So they fixed it. So when the Duldig team comes and says, well, we want to talk about a female artist, I'm like, oh, I'm there. Let's do this. So, and apart from the fact that she. The umbrella. I mean, I didn't know the story, and I straight away was like, well, more people need to know this story. So,
so the next step is the site visit to here. So here are some photos we actually took when we arrived. It was a chance to meet and greet the team, and we were very warmly received and given the tour by Eva. And that was the start of our journey to begin to really understand the story and the history.
And this is just, I just thought I should include this because this is how all books start, as a Word document. And I think it encapsulates what we have to do, is like, we have to take that Word document and make it into something that people care about and make a connection and want to pick it up and take it home and purchase it as a gift or have it on their bookshelf. So that's where it begins, along with, and we're very lucky with this project, there's just a wealth of imagery for us to work with, so that really helps the design side of a book and helps tell a story. And so this is our education process of learning, reading the manuscript and looking through all of the images and distilling down that story and how we interpret it sometimes a little bit differently to the authors. So we hope that we add to those stories. And then again, educating ourselves, and we then start to begin to research the era and the visuals around the era and the secession era. And it's really important to understand where Slava came from, but it's also important for us to, even though we understand the visuals around it and the look and the feel, we don't want to emulate that. We want to have a book that has a contemporary voice as well. So we don't want a book to look like it was written back in that era, and that all the authors are current and relevant now. So we need to reflect the flavour of this in the design.
Here you can sort of see the colour palette and the way we were thinking. Red was something we settled on because it was such an important colour in the work of Slava, and also just the emerging modernist idea around simplifying everything to its first principles elements. We also obviously just absorbed the objects around the house, and particularly the amazing textiles. And also we ended up settling on this font, GT Voltine, which was actually, it's based on a font from the 1930s by Otto Baumberger, and it's quite similar to some of the things that Slava used in her time. So we start by designing a sample layout, and so we're exploring these ideas, trying to capture the sense of the era, playing with suitable typography, and then we also have to play with the grid, so that's a whole element and exercise in itself. We ended up settling on a 2.5 column grid because it gave us the right measure and we could flip it, but we could also, it gave us space to get the pictures up nice and large as well. We were very keen to use more tactile, natural fibres, papers, and natural earthy colours, because I think it sort of reflected Slava's sort of honest materials.
Truth to materials.
Truth to materials, yeah. And then once the sort of approach is approved, then we roll out the book, the first pages, and then we go through and take all the amazing research and photos and put it all together so that it talks to each other and makes sense and keeps people interested. And then it's over to the team for editing, correcting, proofreading.
That's surely a lot of work into
Yeah.
half a sentence.
And you know, I was just reflecting before and I walked into the lounge room how the colour palette, when this book, you could put it in that room and it feels like the room is styled around the book. It works quite well with this. You know, the red, obviously, the cream, but also the green. There's this sort of highlights of green in that room that sort of all connect and feels quite comfortable there. So now that we know the book inside and out, it's time to move onto the colour. And so being brutally honest is a really important part of our process, and it's one of the things that gives us confidence that we're doing the right thing. I don't really know how people work on their own and just go ahead hoping that they've made the right decisions, but we kind of rely on each other to give us the truthful feedback and helpful, obviously. But I think, you know, part of our job is to do something that's really good, and that feedback helps us to push it to the next level and keep that edge. And
then we'll get the client's feedback, and from there we will have the chosen cover, which went through quite seamlessly actually. Sometimes we work on books, the covers can go on forever and are quite painful. So, but this, and it helps with the beautiful illustration done by Slava to be able to use that on the cover. So
I think the team was very settled on that image.
I think there was a pattern, yeah.
But it did evolve a little. I mean, it became
There was
different. But I think I like the fact that it has that human element to it. It feels intimate, and it moved away from being, you know, a more crisp art book into something more personal.
Yeah.
And we came up with this idea of having a dust jacket, and in the end we actually took one of the concepts, I think it was Melinda's idea, and used it as the cover inside the book. So in some ways we got
some of those ideas.
some of those ideas
around. Yeah. So, but this is the artwork stage, so we're putting that is actual artwork. It's hard to see. But and this is where we start packaging it up and getting it ready to go off to print. And yeah, here's the print. This is off at the printers.
These are photos I actually took down at the print press.
Yeah. And this is a delicate stage because, especially when you're dealing with artworks, and we're on uncoated paper to try and reproduce these as well as we possibly can. Because uncoated paper loves to suck the life out of artworks, but I think they did a really good job, and we were there to help adjust the images to make sure that they're as vibrant as possible. And it was really great. A lot of books are printed offshore, so we were very pleased that the team decided to print it here in Australia, and so we could have that control to get the best imagery possible for Slawa. And I include this because as designers, this is usually how we see the final thing. It arrives in our studio in a package, all wrapped up. All the anxiety for a job is in that one package. So I think we have three things that we worry about, and it's will our peers respect what we've done? Will we be happy with what we've done? Will the team be happy? They're so invested in this job, and will people buy this book? So yeah, unripping, it's probably one of my favourite, and also Modernist. We find that very nerve-wracking to open the book. And so then once it's launched, it goes into our collection of projects that we've worked on, and we always feel very, very proud of all the projects we work on, and hopefully you've seen a good taste of the sorts of projects we work on and we really feel passionate about. So a little bit of process on how we work as a book designer and how we get too over-invested in our projects. So, this is also a bit of a nerdy part, but we really love to visit our books. So we'll go and look at them at readings or the NGV and see how they're displayed, and there's Hamish wandering around. And so yeah, the journey continues with our books out in the wild, we call it. So yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Well, I hope you like the books a little bit more after that. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. We do have all the print. The print.
Come off the press.
Off the press,
as we
yeah.
go. These are the things I guess we sent to you.
Yes.
And that's how it sort of looks to us until it gets all bound together.
Yeah.
And we check it with magnifying glasses and then worry about colour.
Yeah. Yeah.